Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for that warm welcome. I have lived in Minnesota for over 30 years and have never had an opportunity to visit St. Joan of Arc, and it is my pleasure and my privilege to be here. Your reputation precedes you, as one might say. As John mentioned, I wrote a book. It was published in March by John Wiley & Sons, and since then I've been traveling across the country, actually I can now say the world, and I've been speaking on the topic of restoring public trust and confidence in the financial services industry. And I've been running myself ragged, to be honest with you. I've done over 100 media interviews, radio, television, newspapers, magazines. I've spoken in front of almost as many groups. And I'm doing it because I believe that issue, restoring public trust and confidence in the financial services market, is one of the most important issues we face today. And I feel that way for two reasons. The first is that, as the dedication to the book says, and it is dedicated to individual investors and their faith in a better future, investing is really an act of faith. For people to put their money into stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, they have to believe at some level that the future will be better than today. And that faith was shattered by the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, and then every week or every month since then, somebody in the financial services industry does something to re-injure and undermine your faith yet again. So as a result, investors are sitting on the sidelines, and unless and until they believe it's safe to put their money back in the markets, we're not going to have the patient long-term capital we need for the economy to grow. And as you know, we desperately need the economy to grow. But the second reason I've been talking about this is that I believe the financial crisis, what led up to it, what happened during it, what's happened since, is an example. It's a case study. It's a narrow case example of what happens when we lose touch with our stewardship mission, purpose, values, and responsibilities. The basic mission of the financial services industry should be to facilitate economic growth. We match up people who have money with people that need money and do it in a way so the economy grows more quickly than it would without us, and standards of living are enhanced. We should be a means to greater ends, not an end unto ourselves. So listen to what the Yale professor, Robert Shiller, says. He says, most people define finance narrowly, but finance is really just creating the architecture for achieving goals. The goals served by finance originate with us. Finance does not embody a goal. Finance is not about making money per se. It exists to support other goals, those of society. Now, how far from that proposition did we stray going into the financial crisis? It's not an exaggeration to say we lost our way and we haven't found it yet back. The notion that the financial services industry exists to serve social goals is, I think, one example of what a remarkable new book published by the University of St. Thomas's Center for Ethical Business Cultures talks about. The book, which I recommend to all of you, is called Corporate Responsibility: The American Experience. And it uses a term which John used in his introduction, the corporate social contract. Now, this isn't obviously a contract that's formal in any way. It's not written down. It evolves. It's fluid. But what it is at any given time, it's society's expectations of what business's proper role is. And what society says to business, again, in lots of different ways, is we expect this of you, and if you do this, then we will give you a license. We will give you a franchise to pursue your business goals. And not only did the financial services industry fail to live up to society's expectations of that business, Society's expectations about business are changing. And I think that's partially what we saw in the Minnesota Marriage Amendment. I just wrote a blog for Harvard Business Review talking about the outpouring of business opposition to the amendment, which no question was one of the reasons, only one, we were successful defeating it. A lot of CEOs like me took heat for taking a public position against that amendment, and a lot of the businesses like General Mills that corporately declared their opposition took heat because there were people who said, you have no business as a business person, as a CEO, taking a stand on this moral or religious or social issue as a business or a CEO. You have no business. Well, guess what? It may once have been the case, as Milton Friedman said, that the only role of business was to earn a return for shareholders. But the only place that's talked about right now is on Fox Business News. Elsewhere, and Ken Powell, who's the CEO of General Mills, listen to what he wrote in his foreword to the book I just mentioned. He says, shareholders, customers, employees, and host communities today increasingly demand responsible, even enlightened engagement in matters that go well beyond a corporation's earnings for the last quarter. Now, my book, the subtitle, it's about stewardship, the core principle of stewardship. The subtitle is Lessons Learned from the Lost Culture of Wall Street, because as I said, it looks at the financial crisis and draws lessons about what happens when we lose touch with our stewardship mission, purpose, and responsibilities. And I think the same thing is happening in other areas of society. So just past a billboard advertising Christmas story. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Story is, as they do every year, going to be on at the Guthrie. And so think about the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. The financial crisis is a ghost of Christmas past. We've seen what happens when you lose touch with your stewardship anchor, as it played out in the financial crisis. But the ghost of Christmas present is playing out right now in front of us in the public finances of developed nations, in Europe, but also in the United States, where you hear about the fiscal cliff, you hear about reaching the debt ceiling again. Well, guess what? That issue is caused by a stewardship failure to act on what everybody knows, and that is we've made entitlement promises that can't be sustained at current levels of revenue. And you have to solve the problem with a combination of revenue increases and spending cuts. You know that, our political leaders know that, but nobody has the stewardship fortitude to act on that. And unless they do, we are going to have a crisis that makes the last one look like child's play. And then with respect to the ghost of Christmas future, pick your ghost. Climate change, income inequality, population growth married to resource scarcity. These are all, like the public debt crisis, like the financial crisis, train wrecks in slow motion caused by stewardship failures and solvable if we all stand up and behave more responsibly than we have in recent years. My book starts and ends with a profile of my grandfather, Senator Robert Alfonso Taft. He was the leader of the Senate Republicans in the 1940s and 50s. His nicknames, I mean, poor guy, they really were Mr. Republican, Mr. Integrity. There's a chapter on him in Profiles in Courage, John F. Kennedy's book, written about his willingness to stand up for his core principle, equal justice under law, even though it cost him really his political career. And he's the only member of Congress, the only representative in the House of Representatives, and the only U.S. senator to have a memorial built in his honor on the Capitol grounds. It's a 10-story bell tower, 200 yards from the Capitol Rotunda. And I put him in the book because for me, my grandfather emblemizes what it's like to live your entire life in accordance with core principles. And because of his legacy, I believe in the importance of core principles. I believe that if you get them right, anything is possible. If you don't get them right, nothing else matters. For my grandfather, it was equal justice under law. That's the way I feel about stewardship. If we all wake up every morning and think about what we do in the course of the day, whether it's in our work, our family lives, or our community, in terms of leaving the world a better place than we found it, which is the underlying formulation of the word stewardship, if we think about what we do in terms of serving others, if we think about ourselves as members of a community whose future we hold in our hands, then we can do together what I know you all want to do, and that is to create a future that is better than today. Thank you very much.